going on? Hello, DFS community. Welcome into the Week 4 edition of one of the most accurate DFS shows in the industry. This is episode number 66 of the Adjusted Line Play Report, where we take a deep dive into the play in the trenches. Games are won and lost in the trenches. That's where we're looking. And this allows us to determine the game script and player outcomes for these particular games. Very, very accurate stuff here. The show is presented by Zilla Fantasy Elite. I am your host, Todd Hoffman, and you can find myself over on Twitter at ToddZilla1337. And you can find Zilla Fantasy Elite over on Twitter at Zilla Fantasy. All right, folks, Week 4 edition. Got some good ones last week, especially those Monday night games. Go look at those. Just absolutely crushed the calls in both of the Monday night football games. So that was good to see. We're going to hop right in. For those of you who are new, welcome in. Shout out to Tim if you're watching. Hopefully your fantasy football team improves and you can use this to make your start-sit decisions a little bit better. Shout out Tim if you are watching this. Maybe we'll give you one of those. All right, special shout out to Tim again. Hope you're watching and you can improve your team a little bit. Inside joke there. All right, so for those of you who are new, we are going to start with the number one game on the main slate. It's 49 Vegas game total, and we're going to go all the way down to the lowest game total for the main slate. So that's for your DFS options. Throughout the entire show, we're going to provide what we believe will be the game script, some likely players that you want to target, some players that you want to fade. Those could be prop bets for you for higher or lower on those particular players as well. Get a lot of feedback that people really appreciate that, and they do really well with the island game matchups. Based off of this with the high variability, they can kind of figure out who does well, who doesn't, and make money off of that. So that's the plan going forward, and hopefully we can get you, on the right foot for your fantasy football games. Let's get into this first matchup here. It's Washington at Arizona. This is the number one game on the slate. As I had mentioned, it's a 49 Vegas game total, so pretty healthy one there. Has been bet down from, I believe it maybe started at 51 or 50 and a half. Bet all the way down to 49. I wouldn't be shocked to see that land at 48 and a half by the end of the weekend. Right now it's Friday evening, and as of right now, it's 49 for the Vegas game total. Arizona are 3.5 point home favorites. And because of this, that gives them a 26.25 team implied total, which is pretty healthy. It is the number one team implied total on the slate. Washington there at 22.75, actually inside the top 10 at the 8th best team implied total on the slate. So pretty healthy game environment here. They think there's a lot of points that are going to be scored, even though they are betting it down. It is still the number one game on the slate. It's kind of a weird one here for the pass game with Washington. So they're number 25 in offensive pass protection, meaning the quarterback is taking sacks or, sacks maybe when they wouldn't otherwise be expected. Arizona, on the other hand, is getting home and getting sacks and perhaps when you wouldn't otherwise expect. But really, if you remember from the Thursday Night Theory shows, this particular box here that I'm highlighting, offensive pass protection, defensive pass rush, is the adjusted sack rate. So, if you get a sack on 3rd and 15, not worth as much as one that would be on 2nd and 3 maybe, where you wouldn't expect the team to be passing. If you get a sack in those scenarios, worth a little bit more on defense than those scenarios. Same with the offensive line. It's worth a little bit less of a dip if you are giving them up on 3rd and 15 versus a 2nd and 3. So keep in mind what this tells me is Arizona may be able to pressure Washington. Again, this isn't a pressure rate, but rather an adjusted sack rate. I don't have the pressure rates with me. So Arizona may be landing on some of these sacks, which tells me they could be getting home or pressuring Jaden Daniels in this, which could lead to him scrambling more. He does have a very high scramble rate, so I'd expect him to have a pretty decent amount of rush attempts in this. I'm not sure what his line is on that, but 10 rush attempts in this game I think is well within reason for him. So if his line is below 10 rush attempts on any sort of thing, I would be fine placing a prop bet over that. But a lot of times with this too, you're going to need to get the ball out quicker because you're going to be under pressure. So a lot of times that leads to dump offs to the tight end or the running backs and any of the slot receivers. So guys like Luke McCaffrey, Brian Robinson, he might be very popular, but he could see a bunch of work underneath. And then same with Zach Ertz. Don't be shocked if you see those three with some extra targets in this, as well as Jaden Daniels getting out and getting a lot of scrambles in this particular matchup based off of this. Now, the DVOA is basically how effective you are on a per play basis. Washington, very, very efficient, very effective when they do pass the ball. They're number 7. These are red-green matchups. Arizona 29. So when they do pass the ball, expect Washington to be very successful. Again, that's probably really going to help guys like Luke McCaffrey and Ertz do really well. When they do get the ball, they're probably going to gain some additional yards than they otherwise might expect. So expect that to do well. And then the run game's pretty even up. So Washington 14 and 9 in the run blocking categories. Arizona number 17 and number 11. That's just telling me Washington's slight favors there, but it's pretty close. In those scenarios, I just say studs eat. I don't think Washington has any studs on their team. Brian Robinson, maybe an above average running back at best, but pretty much a league average running back. So I'd expect this to be an all right game for him. In the run game, it's nothing to write home about. 4.2 yards per carry, something like that. I don't see him being astronomical there. It looks like the pass game is going to be more effective, with Jaden Daniels probably being a lot more effective with those scrambles than any of the run game here for Washington. So that's the away team. For those of you who are new, we attack that away team first, and then we look at the home team. So Arizona, number 12 in offensive pass protection, Washington 30th in that pass rush. I fully expect Kyler Murray to have plenty of time to throw the ball in this, and if he's got plenty of time to throw the ball, it probably means Marvin Harrison Jr. or any deep threats for Arizona are going to do well. And really, that is Marvin Harrison Jr. for Arizona. So if you don't know already, Washington has gotten absolutely smoked by the wide receiver ones throughout the first 3 weeks. Jamar Chase last week, over 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Malik Neighbors in week 2, over 100 yards. I think he also had 2 touchdowns in that game. And then who did Washington play in week 1? I don't remember, but their number 1 wide receiver also, I think, had over 100 yards and a touchdown. So expect the same from Marvin Harrison Jr. here. Definitely DFS viable, but he'll probably be a very popular play. And then, as we had mentioned, Washington, number 32 in pass DVOA. So they're absolutely giving it up. Arizona, very effective passing the ball, number 5. So this is telling me they're going to be highly effective when they do pass the ball. Expect their offense to hum in the pass game. Kyler Murray viable. I would say if you're looking at large field tournaments, Greg Dortch and Michael Wilson are also an option to get a little bit different from what is probably going to be a very popular Marvin Harrison Jr. based off of this. And then if you really want to deep dive, bottom of the barrel tight end, Tip Ryman, I think it's Tip Ryman, is the backup for the tight end there. Super athletic guy. I think he's 6'5", 271 pounds. He ran like a 4.64 in the 40-yard dash. Very good vertical. So the dude's super athletic and huge. You could see him with, maybe popping off on a game like this. Just getting him involved if they're, leading Washington at any point. Getting into the run game, Arizona 27th in run blocking, not very good. Washington 22nd, slightly in the favor there of Washington. And then 26 for run DVOA in Arizona, Washington 28th. And really, this is kind of a wash here. I would actually say Arizona may find themselves with a little bit more success on the ground than they're perhaps used to with what these numbers say. So on a play-by-play basis, I wouldn't be shocked to see James Conner being a little bit more effective. And truly, based off of this, it looks like Arizona's offense is going to be very good. The pass game should really be good. And then the run game should be better than they otherwise have been this year. Even though they have been decent, they'll be better than usual. And then Washington up here, they're probably going to need some quicker throws when they do pass it, and they'll be successful there. Otherwise, I think they're going to be leaning very heavily on Jaden Daniels and Brian Robinson in this, as they probably dump it off to him in the pass game. So that's kind of how we attack the games, what the game script may look like, and then a lot of times we'll get into the pace of play. So Washington actually very slow, number 28 in overall pace of play. They're 31st in neutral situation. You can see right across the board in their pace, which is unfortunate. In a game like this, where the Vegas game total is so high, this is probably why it's getting bet down, because Washington plays slow. And then we look at Arizona. They're actually 22nd in overall pace of play and 19th in offensive neutral situation. For those of you who don't know what offensive neutral situation is, that's the first 3 quarters outside of the last 2 minutes of the first half, where the offense might be playing a little bit differently, and then when the score is within 8 points during those time periods. So if the team's greater than 8 points, spread, doesn't count for offensive neutral situation if it's outside of those first 3 quarters. Or in that 2-minute drill during the first half also doesn't count. So Arizona below average in pace of play there. So this is partly why it's getting bet down. But I think Arizona is going to be highly effective here. It's going to cause Washington to have to pass the ball, which probably leads to more Jaden Daniel rush attempts. And then when they do pass it, probably going to be a little bit quicker dump offs, and they'll be pretty effective doing that. So I wouldn't be shocked to see both of these teams, move the ball back and forth on the field. They might be playing a little bit slower, but I think they will be successful. You won't see a lot of punts in this game, I'm pretty sure, based off of this. So if there's any punt props out there for not punting in the entire game, I don't know what the bet would be on that, but you probably have some pretty good odds for, hey, no punt in a game. I think it just happened for the first time in since 1940 or ever in the NFL last week, actually, with Washington and Cincinnati, and we may see it here again in back-to-back weeks. So keep that in mind. And again, if you're new here, that's how we attack these games, and we're just going to go through the rest of them on this main slate, hit up the Sunday night game, and then the 2 Monday night games, and then we'll have our adjusted line play report for you on week 4, where you can hopefully find some success. All right, next game on the main slate here, 47.5 Vegas game total. Cincinnati heading into Carolina. Just pay attention to weather in this. They got a hurricane running through the southeastern part of the United States. I'm assuming Carolina is going to be affected by this, but come Sunday, it might be a little bit better, but maybe there's some rain and some sloppy field conditions. Just watch out for that. Take that into consideration as I provide this information too. Weather may play an effect here. So actually, Cincinnati, road team, 4.5-point road favorites over Carolina. So they have a 26-point team implied total, which is the second best on the slate. Carolina at 21.5 is the 12th best on the slate. Getting into that Cincinnati side, 16th in offensive pass protection, Carolina 24 in the defensive pass rush. This tells me Cincinnati's going to find themselves with a little bit more time than they're perhaps used to in this game. Their offensive pass DVOA is top 10 at number 10, so that's a green one. And then Carolina, number 18, a little bit below average in defensive pass DVOA. This tells me Cincinnati is going to be pretty effective moving the ball in the air. It's not as good as that Arizona matchup that we just went over, but this is still a pretty good matchup. Joe Burrow should smash. We should see his weapons also have a good time in here. So Jamar Chase, we have Higgins back. And if you want some deeper plays, Mike Gesicki sounds like he's going to be popular in DFS, but you can watch out for him. And then Andre Yoshivas has been getting some red zone targets of all things. So watch out for him and Higgins maybe as a pivot play in DFS off of Jamar Chase, who might be pretty popular in this matchup. He's expensive, just be aware of that. Getting into the run blocking, though, this is where Cincinnati really looks like they're going to take advantage. Number 1 and number 2 in the run blocking and run DVOA on offense. Carolina 29th and 27th. So these are red-green matchups. This tells me Cincinnati is going to be absolutely dominant on the ground. Don't be shocked if you see Zach Moss with a really good game here. Cincinnati moving the ball, in the air, getting it down close to the end zone a bunch of times. I would not be shocked to see Zach Moss have a multi-touchdown game here. Keep in mind that we have seen last week where Chase Brown got a little bit more involved than he had in the first 2 weeks, but he has certainly an opportunity to have an explosive run here from out deep as well. But I really do like Zach Moss. If you want a multi-touchdown line in terms of placing any sort of prop bets, I think that's a decent one. Anytime touchdown for Zach Moss should be pretty good. And again, pay attention to the weather. If it's a little bit rainy, they're probably going to lean on that a little bit more even, and then he becomes a very, very good play in DFS and for your prop bets for an anytime touchdown. Carolina, 17th in offensive pass protection. Cincinnati has not been getting home. They're 23rd. That's a red there. Slight favor of Carolina's offense. Maybe they find themselves with a little bit more time, not taking sacks. with Andy Dalton in there. And then in terms of offensive pass DVOA, Cincinnati 26, Carolina 31st. We know how bad they've been with Bryce Young in there last week. A lot different story with Andy Dalton. We do know Cincinnati is not very good in this end. I think Carolina does see themselves passing the ball pretty effectively against Cincinnati, or at least better than they have been going throughout this whole season. Don't be shocked if you see them move the ball in the air on Cincinnati in this. And then the run stopping is a little bit weird here. So Carolina 10th in offensive run blocking, Cincinnati 26th. So this portion of the run blocking is really, what have you gained on the play? Was it a negative play? That's pretty bad for your offensive line, pretty good for your defensive line. If it was, just a 0-yard game, again, pretty bad for your offensive line, pretty good for your defense. If it was 1 to 3 yards, and then if it was 3 to 5 yards, if it was 5 to 8 yards, 8 to 10, 10 plus. Those are kind of the ranges that they look at for this. Carolina's been good in that end, which tells me they're not taking a lot of negative plays or gaining positive yards on a play-by-play basis. But in general, when you look at the run DVOA, so that compares your situation, down and distance, score in the game, time left of the game, what quarter it is, and compares it to historical averages for the season, Carolina is actually below average there at 27. So in those situations, it seems like they're worse than the rest of the NFL. They're just gaining positive yards, but it doesn't seem like they're explosive on those plays. So positive yards, but not explosive. Looking like they'll get positive yards, but maybe not be explosive here. Cincinnati kind of middle of the pack in that in the run term. So Chuba Hubbard might be popular after a big game last week against Vegas. Does look like he's going to gain positive yardage, but it only might be those 3 to 5 yard gains, and you might not see big 12 to 20, 25 yard gains come from them in this game. And again, pay attention to weather. Pace for Carolina, pretty good, 9 overall, 23rd in neutral situation. Cincinnati, a little bit slower, 20th overall and 29th in neutral situation, so they play a little bit slower, unfortunately. Third game on the main slate, we have Jacksonville going into Houston. Dome game, which we always like for football purposes. Good conditions. It's a 44.5 Vegas game total, so the third one already dropping down into the mid-40s. Third best on the slate. Houston 6-point home favorites at the moment. That gives them a 25.25 team implied total. Jacksonville at 19.25. Houston, the fourth best team on the main slate. Jacksonville, 16th best on the main slate here. And again, this is DraftKings main slate. Actually, the Baltimore and Buffalo game is the third best on the main slate for FanDuel, so they have the Sunday night games in there as well. Just keep that in mind. We'll get to that one at the end as an island game matchup, but just be aware of that. I think that was at 46.5, so pretty similar to that last game, but I think they'd be the third best on the slate. Just keep that in mind for FanDuel. Getting into that Jacksonville side, they are the underdogs. They are number 27 in pass protection, 25 in pass DVOA. They've been atrocious there. It's red. Houston, number 1 in defensive pass rush. They're generating a lot of pressure, getting sacks. And Houston, number 8 in defensive pass DVOA. This tells me Jacksonville is really going to struggle to pass the ball. I would not be shocked to see Houston with a massive amount of sacks in this based off of this information. We know Jacksonville's already down Evan Ingram and some weapons there, so keep that in mind. Doesn't look good on the pass game for Jacksonville. If they are going to throw it, it's going to need to be quick, so don't be shocked if you see a bunch of dump-offs to the tight end and running backs in this, and probably Christian Kirk is the beneficiary in the wide receiver room, similar to last week, as we called on the Monday night game. And then the offensive run blocking, that does look to be the better of the matchups for Jacksonville. They're number 8 in run blocking, green. Houston, though, number 4, and then Jacksonville 12th in offensive run DVOA, Houston number 2. So Jacksonville, way better running the ball. That's probably going to be the better of the two matchups here, but unfortunately for them, Houston also very good at stopping the run. So Jacksonville is probably not going to be as effective as they're used to in the run game. They're definitely not going to be very good in the pass game based off of this. I think Jacksonville did win in Houston last year in a matchup like that, and then they've lost a bunch of games since that particular matchup where they won like 23-20 or something. Just keep that in mind any given Sunday. But based off of this, it looks like Houston's going to dominate on defense. They're going to be absolutely all over Trevor Lawrence. Don't be shocked to see multiple interceptions, multiple sacks on Houston's end. Their defense definitely viable in DFS, if you want to bet a anytime interception on Trevor Lawrence's part, I think that's almost a guarantee in this particular matchup. And then getting into the run game there, Houston should also stop them there. So I don't see Jacksonville doing very well. Houston could be a very good DFS play for your defense. Then on the offensive side, 21st in offensive pass protection for Houston. Fortunately for them, Jacksonville has been pretty bad on that end. 28th and 30th in their pass categories. Houston 23rd in their offensive pass category. So they haven't been super explosive, surprisingly, considering what they had last year and bringing in Stephon Diggs. But it looks like in this particular thing, they're going to be able to pass the ball a little bit better than they're used to. We do have Tank Dell already ruled out, so it's looking like Nico Collins could have a blow-up game here. We could see Stephon Diggs with 10, 12 targets in this as well if they're going to be passing the ball a bunch. And then that looks actually to be the better of the two matchups, despite them not being very good passing. It is a better matchup here where Jacksonville is just very bad in the pass categories. In terms of the run game, Houston number 7, Jacksonville 8th in stopping the run, and then Houston 14 in offensive run DVOA, Jacksonville 13. That is really a studs eat scenario. They're going to have Cam Akers most likely for Houston. He's a little bit more expensive than he was last week, or a lot more expensive than he was last week, but still relatively cheap for a starting running back with a ton of volume coming up. If Houston's going to be dominating on defense, getting a ton of opportunities, I could see Akers with quite a bit of run in this and, 20, 25 opportunities where he does get into the end zone and then he becomes viable for a start on your fantasy teams. Can probably pick him off of waivers or trade for him after last week. So give him a whirl in some of your lineups. Jacksonville does play quick. Houston kind of middle of the pack there for their offensive overall pace of play in neutral situations. So nothing to write home about there, other than more sacks maybe for Houston's team as Jacksonville tries to get that ball out quicker. Then dipping down into the fourth game on the slate, 43.5 Vegas game total. Minnesota going into Green Bay. Green Bay 2.5-point home favorites, giving Green Bay a 23 team implied total and Minnesota 20.5 for their team implied total. Green Bay 7th best, Minnesota 14th best team implied totals on the main slate. Offensive pass protection for Minnesota 28th. Been taking some sacks. Green Bay 8th in the defensive pass rush. They've been getting home. I would expect Minnesota to have to get the ball out a little bit quicker than they're perhaps used to in their matchups. Don't be shocked if we see some dump offs to Aaron Jones in this, especially that revenge game coming back into Green Bay. Johnny Munt is the tight end there in Minnesota, but really the underneath stuff, I think we could see Justin Jefferson run some of that as they make adjustments in this game, or maybe the game plan to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Those guys get involved. We could see Powell, who's more of a jitterbug type, get involved here too. But we do have Jordan Addison coming back. He tends to be more of the deeper and intermediate route. He kind of shares those duties with Justin Jefferson. So I'm not really sure who's going to be the wide receiver that gets a lot of that slot type work. Nailor has also been kind of in there doing stuff. But like I said, I think Powell's more of that thing. And if they want to spread out their offense, he might get in there a little bit more to become one of those, that fourth wide receiver, trying to get those quicker dump offs and kind of neutralize that pass rush. In terms of effectiveness, 11 versus 12 on defense versus offense in the DVOA. That's pretty neutral there. Situation where studs eat, is Justin Jefferson for sure. Run blocking, Minnesota number 4, pretty good. Green Bay 7th in stopping the run. And then 18th in run DVOA for Minnesota, 20th for Green Bay. Pretty even across the board, slight favor of Minnesota. But again, this is kind of studs eat. Aaron Jones has been pretty good. I think he looks good. This is a revenge type game. But this doesn't look like a great game for him to go off necessarily. I think he's just going to be standard successful. And he'll probably see quite a few dump offs. So don't be shocked to see him get 12 or 15 rush attempts and 5 or 6 targets in this particular game and have himself a decent day, but I don't know if the ceiling is going to be there for this particular game. He should just be, standard effective, but not a huge ceiling. In terms of Green Bay, number 10 in offensive pass protection, number 2 in offensive pass DVOA, so they're used to being pretty good there. Unfortunately for them, Minnesota number 5 in defensive pass rush and number 2 in defensive pass DVOA, so slight favor of Minnesota here. They might be able to apply some pressure. Not sure if it's going to be Jordan Love back there, but most likely he's going to be there for that game. Sounds like he's trending in that direction. Otherwise, it's going to be Malik Willis. I don't like his chances against Minnesota's defense. Jordan Love might be able to handle that, though. And then the run blocking. Green Bay number 25 in run blocking, Minnesota number 12. I expect kind of a lot of negative rushes here on the Green Bay side. And then Minnesota number 1 in run DVOA, so people not being very effective against them, even though Green Bay is number 7. I wouldn't expect Green Bay's run game to have a very successful game here. They're probably going to have to rely on that pass game to move the ball, and they do have a lot of pass catchers there. So Romeo Doubs is actually the one that runs the most routes. In a game that looks like it, by all means, it's going to be back and forth, where Minnesota, they're going to be okay in the pass game, but need to do it with a dink and dunk approach. Run game is neutral. Basically, the pass game here for Green Bay is neutral. The run game's a little bit below average. It's kind of an interesting one here. I think this is going to be a back and forth, very close game. But I will go ahead. I think this is one that we need to go ahead and say there's an upset alert here. I think Green Bay can get upset here at home versus Minnesota. It looks like they're going to struggle a little bit on offense, and if they're going to be doing anything, it's going to be in the pass game, and that rush game is going to suffer a little bit from there. So kind of a weird one here. I think this will be a very close one. I wouldn't be shocked to see Minnesota win like a 17-13, 17-14 type game here, and this game kind of hits the under as well. So 43.5 Vegas game total isn't very high, but I don't like the chances of these particular offenses scoring in this game. All right, now we're getting into the 5th game on the slate. Vegas game total of 42.5. Philadelphia, 22-point team implied total. Tampa Bay, 20.5 team implied total, giving Philadelphia 1.5-point road favorite status in this game. Philadelphia, 9th best team implied total. Tampa Bay, 14th best team implied total there. Offensive pass protection for Philadelphia, number 11. Tampa Bay, number 32 in the pass rush. Expect Philadelphia to have a decent amount of time. They did lose some offensive linemen last week. Lane Johnson looks like he's out for a while. I can't remember who else they lost, but that might be a little bit different than an 11-32 matchup compared to what you're used to with that Philly squad. Just keep that in mind. Offensive pass DVOA number 13 versus Tampa Bay 17. This is a situation that you're going to have to monitor pretty heavily. Devonta Smith already ruled out. We do have A.J. Brown back at practice in a limited fashion with his hamstring. He is now questionable, been listed as doubtful or out the last couple of weeks. He is now questionable. They really need him in this matchup. If he doesn't play, it's really going to be the Dallas Goedert show, and I don't know who else they have. Jahan Dotson runs a lot of routes, never gets targets. They got rookies there. They got guys like Paris Campbell who are coming off the practice squad to come out there and run some routes. So it's going to be pretty bad in that pass game if A.J. Brown isn't there. If A.J. Brown is there, I'd expect him to get his fair share of work, provided he plays a full allotment of snaps. He's probably going to see 15 targets in a matchup like this, especially if they're going to get a little bit of additional time. It doesn't look like Tampa Bay is very good at generating sacks there. Offensive run blocking, Philly number 15, Tampa Bay 16 in stopping the run, so the middle of the pack there for both of them. And a little bit better matchup here for the run DVOA, Philadelphia number 6, so they're generating some explosive plays. Tampa Bay middle of the pack at 14. I'd expect Barkley to be able to pop off a few bigger runs in this. And he is one of those studs where a matchup like this, where it's pretty even up, I think he can do a little bit better than the offensive line blocks for him. But again, remember, they have some offensive linemen now. They may find that a little bit of a struggle as well. Just keep that in mind and go look at those injury reports for their linemen and make an assessment for yourself on that one. In terms of the Tampa Bay side, we can see Philadelphia red across the board, so I'm just going to read those across. 29 in defensive pass rush, 24th in defensive pass DVOA, both red. Defensive run stopping, 27th. Defensive run DVOA, 29th. So red across the board for them. Fortunately, on their defense's end, Tampa Bay also number 31 in offensive pass protection, and then 16th in offensive pass DVOA. So they've been pretty good on a play-by-play basis for their particular situations. But then the run blocking, Tampa Bay 28th and 29th, equally as bad as Philadelphia's defense has been in the run category there. Remember, they got kind of ran all over up until last week, and then that kind of stopped. So I don't know what you want to make of that, but I don't think Tampa Bay is going to be super successful against Philadelphia, but they might find it a little bit easier sledding against them than they're otherwise used to. They're a red matchup, Philadelphia red matchup, so wouldn't be shocked to see them a little bit better. Tampa Bay, though, it looks like the way that they're going to move the ball a little bit more effectively is via the air. Philadelphia doesn't look like they're generating a ton of sacks. And if that's the case, Tampa Bay's offensive line, which is, they're giving up some sacks, they might have a little bit more time than they're perhaps used to, which is going to be good for, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin in this particular matchup. I'd expect them to have decent games. And then if you think Philadelphia is going to be getting after them, Rachaad White might see a few additional targets. Tampa Bay does play ultra slow, and then Philadelphia is a little bit above average there at number 10 and number 13. Just keep that in mind as well. Tampa Bay just a slow team and not very good on offense based on these numbers for their offensive line. Sixth best game on the main slate, New Orleans heading into Atlanta. Actually, I think New Orleans was favored in this going into the week. Atlanta now 3-point home favorites over New Orleans. So with that 41 Vegas game total, that gives Atlanta a 22-point team implied total and New Orleans a 19-point team implied total. That is the 9th best on the slate for Atlanta, 18th overall for New Orleans. Kind of interesting there, seeing New Orleans fall off the wagon after those first 2 weeks and then go into Philadelphia and don't do anything. So offensive pass protection, number 5, offensive pass DVOA, number 6, Atlanta 31st in defensive pass rush, Atlanta 22nd in defensive pass DVOA. That's telling me Derrick Carr is going to be just fine. They should have plenty of time to throw. Now, I know New Orleans does have some offensive line injury issues as well, so keep that in mind, but Atlanta doesn't seem like they're very good in that regard, so they could be fine even if they got some backups in there. The run blocking does look very good. Number 6 and number 5, Atlanta 23, which is red, 22 just on the cusp of being red. Huge favor of New Orleans. This is indicative that New Orleans offense should get back on track against Atlanta. It's in the dome. Just keep in mind, offensive line injuries can play a big role in this being a huge variance. So Atlanta might find it a lot easier than this would otherwise suggest against some backups, but their defense doesn't look like it's all that good anyway, so just keep that in mind. I think New Orleans should be fine here, even with the offensive line injuries. Derek Carr, Chris Olave in play. Kamara should be okay as well. I would be a little bit more concerned about Shaheed, starting some of the backups. Jamal Williams probably not in play. Taysom Hill's coming back. I'm not super excited about that for tight end play, but just keep it in mind. And New Orleans, I think they'll be okay based off of that, even if they do have some injuries. Atlanta side, 8 in offensive pass protection. New Orleans, number 12, slight favor of Atlanta, but nothing to write home about. And then Atlanta, 15th, middle of the pack in offensive pass DVOA. New Orleans, number 7 in defensive pass DVOA, so Atlanta might find it a little bit of a struggle, even if they have some time to move the ball super effectively, but they're just going to have to be a little bit more methodical moving the chains or moving the ball down the field. They might find it a little bit more difficult than usual. The Atlanta side for run blocking, number 9, New Orleans 13, and then offensive run DVOA for Atlanta 17, New Orleans number 7. Based off of this, it just looks like Atlanta might struggle a little bit more than you'd hope for. On a play-by-play basis, they might not be getting sacked, or they might be gaining positive yardage on each run, but just not generating any explosive plays. So tell me this isn't going to be an explosive game for Atlanta. So that kind of leaves out Darnell Mooney in this one. He's more of an explosive playmaker. I would expect them to lean more on Kyle Pitts and Drake London and some of these underneath guys. I think Ray McLeod might actually see quite a bit. Don't be shocked, too, if we see Bijan Robinson get involved in the pass game more than coming out of the backfield, but he actually runs some routes, out wide or from the slot. I wouldn't be surprised to see that there. He's probably the biggest beneficiary of a game play like this, where they're going to have to be slow and methodical moving it down. You might see him with a ton of volume, 20, 25 opportunities in a game like this, where it might be close. Unless New Orleans is absolutely blowing them out, then this might become a big problem. But Atlanta does play very fast. It's going in their favor. New Orleans plays really slow, but They haven't had a ton of time where it's been a close matchup outside of last week against Philadelphia. They are 23rd in neutral situation, which still is red, but overall pace of play is 32 because I think they spent a ton of time leading by like 50 points in these games and just trying to run the clock out. And here we have the first of two games that are tied for 7th best on the slate. First one, Rams heading into Chicago. Chicago 3-point home favorites with a 40.5 Vegas game total. That's pretty far down there, and we're only tied for number 7 here. This gives Chicago a 21.75 team implied total. That's only 11th best on the slate, and they are the favorites. Los Angeles Rams at 18.75 are the 20th best on the slate out of 12 games here, and 13 if you include FanDuel's Sunday night game. All right, Rams offensive pass protection, number 24, Chicago 22. Pretty even there, nothing to write home about. DVOA though, Rams 17th, middle of the pack. Chicago been pretty good in that part and not giving up explosive plays, number 6. Rams really struggling there with their top 2 wideouts out. Demarcus Robinson and Jordan Whittington are there. Tutu Atwell seemed to be the biggest beneficiary last week. I don't know if that's going to be the case this week. I think it's going to be more of the Demarcus Robinson, Jordan Whittington show in this particular matchup, as it looks like they might have a little bit more time than they're used to throw the ball against this Chicago defensive front, but they're going to have to do it kind of slow and methodically down the field, and those two guys profile more as the slow and methodical type versus somebody like Atwell, who's more of a deep and intermediate route type person. And then the Rams, in terms of run blocking, 26, Chicago 14th in stopping the run. I'd expect them to get stuffed or behind the line of scrimmage on quite a few plays when they do run the ball, but when that's not the case, they should find themselves being a little bit more explosive than they're otherwise used to against this Chicago run defense. So it's pretty even up. 24 offensive run DVOA, 25 defensive run DVOA there. So don't be shocked if you see Kyren Williams getting involved and having an okay game in the run game, but it might be a high variance one where, hey, he's got 2 or 3 carries, one behind the line of scrimmage, a couple stuffed, and then all of a sudden he gets an 8-yard run. And then, 1 yard gain, 3 yard gain, and then, a 12-yard gain. So I think that's going to be kind of the game that he has. It's going to be, you look at the box score, 8 attempts, 12 yards, and then the next time you look, 11 attempts and 56 yards or something like that. So could be one of those high variance type of games from Kyren Williams. In terms of the Chicago side, very interesting here. It's red across the board. Makes for an interesting matchup for Chicago on offense. 26 and 26 in the defensive and offensive pass rush. Offensive pass DVOA 30, Rams 31st. So Rams have been getting absolutely torched. They're historically bad in the last 10 seasons. I think they're in the top 3 or 4 in terms of how many passing yards they've given up. This is very good news for Chicago's rookie there, Caleb Williams. I think it sounds like they're going to get Keenan Allen back for this particular matchup as well. So he could have a full slate of weapons there. Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, rookie Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet. Got some pass catchers out of the backfield in Roschon Johnson and DeAndre Swift, who are pretty good. So keep that in mind. This offense might look a lot better than they have in the first 3 weeks. Caleb Williams, I think, is a sneaky play in DFS. Got plenty of weapons to pair him with, too. Keep that in mind. So I like his over prop. I think it's 220.5 or 221.5 yards on Sleeper. If you have that app, I hit the over on that. I think that was over on Underdog. I hit the over on that. Just keep that in mind. And then the run game, not quite as good, if you want to call it that, for Chicago. 32 in run blocking, 31 in run DVOA. The Rams 28th and 26th. Again, Chicago hasn't been very effective there. It's just been, bad across the board, bad running back, bad offensive line, but they may find the run game a little bit easier here too. So, in this fact, I think Chicago actually might, they might end up with a lot of scoring opportunities in this particular game. They're also a candidate to have their kicker go off, where they may have moved the ball effectively, but then they just lose steam in those drives, and he ends up with 4 or 5 kicks, 4 or 5 field goal attempts in this particular matchup. If you need to stream a kicker, I think he's certainly viable in this matchup Probably the best one that I've seen so far. In terms of maybe this game hitting the over, Chicago looks like it should be able to move the ball. Rams okay on the run game side there. The pass game might be a little suspect, but they're both fast inside the top 10. Rams 9-9 in their overall and offensive neutral situation pace of play, and then Bears actually number 5 and number 6 in those categories. So could see quite a few plays here. Rams defense always in play if you think Caleb Williams is going to throw a bunch of these boneheaded interceptions. But yeah, actually I think this game has a good chance to hit the over because I think Chicago may score quite a few points in this based off of this matchup. And the other game tied for 7th on the slate is New England heading into San Francisco. A lot different type of a game here. San Francisco 10.5-point home favorites. Compared to that last game, it's a 40.5 Vegas game total. This does give San Francisco with the 25.5 team implied total, which is actually the third best, despite the tied for 7th game total ranking. Their team implied total is the third best, and that's because their opponent, New England, is down at 15, which is the worst 24 out of the 24 teams on the main slate, and they would be the worst out of that if you included Baltimore and Buffalo as well. Getting into New England, this could be rough. 29-26 in their pass protection and pass DVOA. San Francisco gets after the quarterback, number 6, and they're middle of the pack there in terms of effectiveness on a play-by-play basis. But against a team like New England, probably going to be pretty effective, especially if they're generating pressure and getting sacks. They could be very effective in getting interceptions and turnovers and everything that you want your defense to be doing. I don't know what their prices are. I'm assuming they're pretty expensive in DFS, but keep an eye out for them. They could be one of the better defenses this week based off of this, especially if they're going to be leading and in pass situations for New England. The run blocking, though, looks like a good situation for New England. Number 12 in run blocking, San Francisco 31. I'd expect New England, when they do run the ball, to actually, get positive yardage on a play-by-play basis, and maybe even chunk yardage, 4 to 6, 4 to 7 at a pop. Run DVOA 19, San Francisco 24. Now that's a little bit closer based off of the scenario stuff, but really like New England's chances of gaining positive yardage while running. Stevenson's definitely the lead back there, but we've seen Gibson be successful already this year, so I wouldn't be shocked to see him have a decent game. Gibson would probably be in play too for some receptions. He gets in there for some pass game stuff as well. New England's going to have to get the ball out quick, so Hunter Henry and the running backs there are going to probably be in line for quite a few targets, especially if they get down quick in a game where they're 10.5-point road underdogs. I think those guys could see quite a few targets here. And then on the San Francisco side, number 22 in pass protection, New England 21st. Pretty even matchup there. But then San Francisco, number 4 in offensive pass DVOA, New England a red at 25. That's a green-red matchup. San Francisco should be very effective when they do pass the ball. They should be creating explosive plays. In terms of getting sacked, it doesn't look like that's going to be an issue. San Francisco probably has a decent day at the office in terms of time to throw the ball. And then the run game, San Francisco number 3 in run blocking, New England 20th in stopping the run. And similar to New England side, I think San Francisco is going to be very effective running the ball. They're going to get 4 to 7, 4 to 8 yards per attempt, continually gaining positive yardage while running the ball. And then in terms of explosive plays, San Francisco 21, New England 16. I just don't expect them to be super explosive, but 4 to 8 yards on every carry is pretty solid. I just don't see them ripping off any 50 or 60 yard touchdowns in this particular matchup against New England. San Francisco, a slow team in general. I expect them to be up, and if they're leading, they're also slow, one of the slowest when they're leading. New England also a slower team, 19th overall, and then 28th in neutral situations. So I think this is a good call. It's going to be a lower scoring or slow game. I wouldn't be shocked if it's close to this, where New England scores 10, San Francisco 25 to 28. Sounds about right. All right, now moving on to the 9th game on the slate. This one's actually tied for 9th as well. So a late game here. Kansas City heading into LA to take on the Chargers as 7-point road favorites. Wow. So big gap there, especially for an away team, but understandable given the two teams here. 40-point Vegas game total, a half point below that last game. Kansas City, 23.5 points for their team implied total, which is 5th best on the slate. Chargers at 16.5 is the 22nd ranked one on the slate, so pretty poor there for the Chargers. In terms of Kansas City's offense, they should have no issues with sacks in this game. Kansas City, number 6 in pass protection. Chargers, 18th in generating a pass rush. Bosa did leave the game last week. I don't know what his status is off the top of my head right now, but keep an eye on that. And then pass DVOA. Kansas City hasn't been generating a ton of explosive plays, and Chargers haven't been giving up very explosive plays. I'd expect that to continue. I think Kansas City is going to lean on Rashee Rice and Kelsey in this particular matchup, as they're just not going to be super explosive. Probably one where you can avoid Xavier Worthy in this particular matchup. It doesn't look like he's going to be great. Even though Kansas City might find themselves with some time, I just don't know how explosive they're going to be against this Chargers defense. It's been pretty good against that so far this year. And then run blocking. Kansas City, number 5. Chargers, number 15 in stopping the run. So Kansas City should be effective on a play-by-play basis. We even saw that last week after Pacheco went out. They were pretty successful there. And then run DVOA, Kansas City top 10. Chargers, though, number 6. So telling me that Kansas City should be able to gain some positive yardage, but they're not going to get any explosive plays. Probably not going to get a ton of explosive plays in the pass game. They're just going to have to be slow, methodical. And again, I think that is more Rashee Rice. That's more Travis Kelsey and some dump offs in the running back game. Kareem Hunt's supposed to get involved. I'd expect him and the guy that came over from Denver, P. Ryan, to have some run in the pass game as well if Chargers are presenting a defense that doesn't allow for explosive plays. Chargers on offense, 19 and 19 in the pass protection categories. Kansas City, 25th and 23rd. Hubbard looks like he might play. That's kind of a game time decision at the moment. Keep that in mind. If he plays, he should have some okay time. He should be okay throwing the ball in terms of explosiveness and having some time to throw. But he's going to be hobbled, so I wouldn't expect a huge ceiling from him, even despite these numbers saying that he should be mildly successful when he's out there. The run game, 17th, Kansas City 11th, a little bit in the favor of Kansas City, and then Chargers middle of the pack, and the run DVOA at 15, Kansas City top 10 at number 10. Chargers probably going to struggle a little bit to run the ball in this. They're going to be a little bit more effective passing. This is a situation where I'm okay starting J.K. Dobbins. I think he could get involved in the pass game. If we see Easton Stick start, it's probably going to be a full fade on this entire Chargers offense. If we have Herbert in there, I don't mind J.K. Dobbins. And, in terms of the Chargers wide receivers, we've seen Quentin Johnson actually really be their number 1 wide receiver. He's been pretty good. This would tell me he may get, 6-7 targets in a game like that and be okay with the volume there, provided he catches the ball. Chargers are a slow team. They got Roman Wilson there, so not unexpected. 30th and 27th. Kansas City kind of middle of the pack, closer to top 10 in neutral situations, so nothing to write home about there. Just looks like a wonky game. I think both offenses are going to have to be a little bit more methodical moving the ball. I wouldn't be shocked to see the Chargers have to attempt quite a few field goals in this particular matchup. The only thing that gives me pause is if Kansas City puts up some points right away, but I don't know how well they're going to be doing that either. So Butker and the Chargers kicker, I think, is Dicker the kicker. I think those two guys could have some pretty solid weeks there as well. All right, and the other game tied for 9th on the slate is Pittsburgh and Indianapolis. Perhaps a mismatch for the ages as Pittsburgh's defense against how poorly Anthony Richardson looks as a quarterback. So this could get really interesting. Pittsburgh heading into Indianapolis. We do like the dome aspect here. Pittsburgh 2-point road favorites on that 40 Vegas game total. Again, that's 9th best on the slate, giving Pittsburgh a 21-point team implied total. Indianapolis at 19. Those are good for 13th and 18th best on the slate, respectively. Pittsburgh offensive side, 15th in pass protection, Indy 19th. Kind of wash that out. Nothing to write home about in terms of sacks in this game or pressure. Pittsburgh, though, 11th in pass DVOA, Indianapolis 21st. I'd expect Pittsburgh to be able to pass the ball fairly effectively on a play-by-play basis, have a standard amount of time, if not a little bit above average amount of time here for Justin Fields. Looking all right for the pass game there. And if he's got a little bit of time and it looks like it's going to be an effective matchup, I think Pickens is an option here to have an all right game against this Indianapolis team. And we haven't gotten into the Indy side, but especially if Pittsburgh's turning the ball over on Indy, getting the ball back to give their offense, we could see Pickens maybe with a little bit higher ceiling than otherwise expected by these numbers. Offensive run blocking for Pittsburgh 16th, Indianapolis 24th. They should be on a play-by-play basis, gaining some positive yardage there. Offensive run DVOA has not been very explosive. So 25th for Pittsburgh, Indianapolis 18. Indy was giving it up on the ground. If you remember the first couple of weeks, absolutely got trounced there. So keep in mind, it could be Najee Harris having a really good week here. Gaining positive yardage, he's just not really an explosive running back in general, so wouldn't be shocked to see him, average 6 yards per carry in a game like this, but maybe have a long run of 16 or 17 in the game and just be within a healthy, positive yardage each run, not really breaking anything off incredibly well. Indianapolis side, number 7 in offensive pass protection, Pittsburgh number 9 in defensive pass rush. Let's tell me Indianapolis is actually giving some time to Anthony Richardson. He doesn't take sacks because of his mobility and size, so he's probably escaping some of this pressure and artificially inflating the numbers lower for the sack rates there for Indianapolis, so keep that in mind. But Pittsburgh does get after the quarterback very well. It could be overwhelmed in this particular matchup. And then in terms of the pass DVOA, Pittsburgh top 5 at number 4. Indianapolis 21st in offensive pass DVOA. Wouldn't expect them to be very explosive. If Indianapolis isn't going to be very explosive on the pass game side, I really don't like Alec Pierce. He's been more their explosive play receiver. Probably going to be more of like a Josh Downs, dumping it off to the running backs type of week. Pittman may get involved a little bit more in a matchup like this as well, especially if they're trying to get the ball out quick and they know they need to get the ball out quick against this defense. They might scheme that up this week to be the case. And then run blocking. Indianapolis 22nd in run blocking. Pittsburgh number 2 in stopping the run. So I wouldn't expect Jonathan Taylor to be gaining a ton of positive yards on a run-by-run basis. Explosive rates. Pittsburgh number 5. So they've been pretty good at preventing explosive plays. Indianapolis, though, number 4 in offensive run DVOA. So they've been pretty explosive when they've ran the ball. Just keep that in mind. That kind of balances each other out. Jonathan Taylor, a stud. He can certainly overcome a defense like that, but expect him to be kind of swamped. Indy does play quick, so number 2 and number 1 in their pace of play. Pittsburgh slower, but really this is telling me that's just more opportunities for Pittsburgh, who looks like they're going to, by all means, be able to move the ball pretty effectively throughout the game. Maybe they won't have an issue scoring touchdowns in this game. And then Indianapolis is going to be forced to pass the ball a little bit more, and then they're going to try a lot of those and quick, and that's going to lead to some Pittsburgh opportunities for turnovers, sacks, strip fumbles, you name it. Pittsburgh defense certainly in play for DFS, but keep that in mind. I think that's going to be how this game rolls out. A little bit lower scoring for Indianapolis. Pittsburgh going to be more slow and methodical. Do they score touchdowns? I don't know. It looks like one where maybe they're going to a little bit better than they have in the past. Denver and the Jets. Jets 7.5 point home favorites, 39.5 Vegas game total, 11th best on the slate, giving the Giants a 23.5 team implied total. That is the 5th best on the main slate. Denver at 16th. They're tied for second worst, or not, they are the second worst at 16 here. 23rd best on the main slate here. Getting into Denver, number 3 in pass protection. They're not getting sacked a lot, but the Jets do apply a lot of pressure. Expect the same. Denver just gets the ball out very quick, which is why that is a good number. Their offensive pass DVOA tells a different story. They get the ball out quick. They're not explosive. Jets prevent explosive plays. Expect more of that to continue this week. Denver struggling in the pass game there, not being very effective. Run blocking, Denver 30th, Jets 30th in stopping the run. I expect that to be a little bit better for Denver. 30th in run DVOA, Jets 21st in run DVOA. I think this is the better of the two matchups. Denver's going to have to get the ball out quick, but I think they're going to be a little bit more effective on the ground running the ball. Based off of this, I would say this is probably going to be more of a Jaleel McLaughlin type game from Denver. we should see when he gets the ball to run, he's going to be effective, and then he's probably going to get involved in the pass game a little bit more in this. Well, the Jets are applying a lot of pressure, so wouldn't be shocked to see him with quite a few targets. Don't be shocked if you see the tight end, Greg Dulcich, get a few targets in this game as New York Jets apply some pressure, even though Denver gets the ball out quick. Jet side, number 9 in offensive pass protection. Denver actually number 4 in pass rush. That's pretty good, a little bit slightly in the favor of Denver's defense there. But in terms of explosion, Jets number 9 in offensive pass DVOA, Denver number 20. This could get really interesting. So Pat Surtain, he's locked down throughout the first 3 weeks. Mike Evans, who else did he play who had bad games? I can't remember who the Jets were playing. But basically locked down everybody. I think the best person had like a 3 for 20 against him. He could be on Garrett Wilson, and if that's the case, we're going to have to see some of these other pass-catching weapons maybe step up in the pass game. That's probably going to be Allen Lazard, and it looked like last week they're finally getting Mike Williams involved. So those two might have a little bit better games than they've had in the past, even though Lazard's been pretty good. In the run game, Denver number 19 in stopping the run, the Jets 18th in run blocking, and then Denver number 12 in defensive run DVOA, the Jets 23rd in run DVOA. Really not giving up very explosive plays. Jets not generating very explosive plays on the ground despite having some really good running backs there. This one's going to get interesting. I think if the Jets are going to move the ball, they're probably going to need to get the ball out a little bit quicker. Probably not going to be an issue for Rodgers, but that's going to lead to more pass attempts to Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, and probably the tight end there, Tyler Conklin. And then we've seen Lazard kind of be more of a quicker threat there, where Patrick Surtain probably locks down Garrett Wilson. We see Lazard and Conklin really run that offense with Breece Hall in that pass game, and I think that's really how Jets are going to have to move the ball in this. I don't think they're going to be super effective on the ground based off of this. They do have a couple studs at running back that could maybe overcome this particular matchup, but I like the under in this. I don't think Denver is going to do a very good job moving the ball. They might run the ball a little bit better, but Jets, I think, are going to struggle moving the ball in this. I think this is going to be closer than the 7.5 line suggests. If you do have the ability to bet on the line, I would say Denver can cover this against the Jets. Keep that in mind. I think this one's going to get a little bit closer. I'm not there to put the upset alert in here, but I think this is going to be a lot closer than people expect. The Jets versus Denver. I think Denver covers that 7.5 point line. Wouldn't be shocked to see this turn out to be like a 13-10, 16-9 type game where the Jets kind of win that, and then we see Denver actually cover that 7.5 point spread. All right, and the lowest game on the slate here, Cleveland and Las Vegas. So this one's going to get a little interesting. So we have Cleveland heading into Vegas as 2-point road favorites. It's a 36.5 Vegas game total. Believe Vegas was actually favored in this game by 1 on Tuesday, but now we recently got some news today. No Davante Adams, no Michael Mayer on the tight end group, no Max Crosby. He hasn't been ruled out, but he is doubtful, so it doesn't look like they're going to have Max Crosby either. So 3 of their top, 5 or 6 best players on the team look like they're going to be out for this matchup. And now we've seen that line swing to Cleveland's favor at number 2. And then I think the game total actually dropped by a point or a point and a half as well. So interesting here for that Vegas side. We've seen them plummet here. I think it probably just happened when that news came out where a bunch of people were betting the under and betting Cleveland to actually win it. We've seen the line swing all the way in their favor now. So keep that in mind. Interesting play there. Cleveland 16th best team implied total at 19.25. Las Vegas 21st at 17.25. Cleveland been pretty bad on offense. 30th in pass protection, 32 in pass DVOA. Fortunately for them, no Max Crosby in this game. They are 27th and 27th in the pass rush and pass DVOA categories. I expect Cleveland to be able to have some time to throw the ball in this and be pretty effective, or more effective than they have, at least in the past in this particular matchup. Keep that in mind. Cleveland might surprise in the pass game here against this Vegas defense, especially without Max Crosby there. Now, the run blocking side, Cleveland 23rd, Vegas 21st. Nothing to write home about there. Run DVOA, Cleveland 20th, Vegas 30th. So Nothing really too crazy here for Cleveland. They might be a little bit successful running the ball, but I think this pass game, they're going to find the pass game a little bit easier than they've otherwise found it in the past. The run game might be a little bit easier. I think this might be a get-right game here for Cleveland. I'm not going to go ahead and say that they're going to put up a massive amount of points because they've been playing bad, but this could be a Deshaun Watson game where he comes back to form. We see close to 300 yards and a couple touchdowns in this. Don't be shocked if we see this in this particular matchup. And they do play fast. They're number 4 in offensive overall pace of play, 12th when neutral situations. And they're one of the faster ones when leading, so they don't really slow down when they lead. On the Vegas side, we already went over some of the injuries. They're 23rd in offensive pass protection. Cleveland 14th in the pass rush. I think Cleveland's got some injuries on their defensive side. Myles Garrett dealing with some issues with his feet. Vegas 24th in pass DVOA. Cleveland number 19 there, so that's also in the favor of Cleveland. I don't think Vegas is going to be able to pass the ball very well. Devontae Adams is out. This looks like they might need to get the ball out quick, especially if Myles Garrett's there. Probably going to be a Brock Bowers week. Jacoby Myers also more of an intermediate and short route guy, so that plays into their favor in terms of that. So expect those guys to get peppered with targets, especially if Cleveland's putting up points and Vegas needs to play catch-up. Their run game looks atrocious, 29th and 32nd. Cleveland number 9 and 19. Avoid Zamir White, avoid Amir Abdullah. You can avoid him too. I meant to say Alexander Madison. Avoid all of their running backs. I don't see them having a good game here. They're probably going to need to pass the ball, as I think Cleveland's actually going to have a pretty good offensive week here. And then, I don't know. It's going to be rough. I think it's going to be Bowers, and it's going to be Jacoby Myers. I don't know who else they're going to pass the ball to. I think it's just going to be those guys. Maybe they dump it off to the running backs a little bit, but I think those two might both see over 10 targets in this particular matchup, so they might be sneaky plays as well. And I think they're going to be good pivot plays in large field tournaments where I think you could get Bowers. He's going to be one of the more expensive guys, and he probably won't, probably less than 3% rostership on that in a large field tournament. You could get tons of leverage on that. So kind of a weird one here, despite being the lowest one. I think there are plays that you can do in here. Amari Cooper, the biggest beneficiary of Cleveland getting time. Elijah Moore might also see a bump up there. Jerry Jeudy's been good in the first couple of weeks and kind of fallen off since. So those three might be your options in that pass game to pair with Deshaun Watson. All right, and that's going to do it for the main slate. Keep in mind that I had mentioned Buffalo and Baltimore are on the main slate for FanDuel. This would be the third best on the main slate for them. But yeah, we're going to attack this as a island game because a lot of people play the island games and are super successful using this adjusted line play report. So this is the Sunday Night Football. Buffalo heading into Baltimore. Baltimore actually 2.5-point road favorites, giving them a 24.5 team implied total because that Vegas game total is at 46.5. Buffalo 22 team implied total. I don't know what those team totals would be on the other main slate, but I think inside the top 10 for sure on Baltimore. Buffalo, I believe, would also be inside the top 10 with 22. Buffalo, number 1 in offensive pass protection and offensive pass DVOA. Baltimore hasn't been that good in that department. Middle of the pack, 17th in pass rush, 13th in pass DVOA. Tell me Buffalo should be just fine in the pass game. We've seen Khalil Shakir really step up to be the number 1 wide receiver and really the number 1 target there. Tight end Kincaid did get involved last week. I think that maybe continues this week as well. Those would be the two that I would be interested in pairing with Josh Allen in any sort of island game matchup or on FanDuel. And then the run blocking, Buffalo 19 and 13 in the run DVOA. Baltimore has been good in stopping the run. Number 3 in defensive run stopping, and then 9 in defensive run DVOA. So I don't think Buffalo's going to have very explosive plays in the run game. You're probably going to see them get stuffed quite a bit in a game like this where they're just, it's 2 yards or less in a lot of their rush attempts. So not looking like a great game for James Cook. Unfortunately for me, I have him in a lot of leagues and I'm starting him just because of the running back landscape. And it doesn't look like he's going to have that effective of a game here against Baltimore unless he gets involved in the pass game, which has been known to happen as well. On the Baltimore side, number 2 in offensive pass protection, Buffalo 13th in the pass rush. They should have some time, or at least not generate a ton of sacks on defense for Buffalo. Then the pass DVOA, Baltimore has been really effective, number 3, but Buffalo number 5 in the pass DVOA. Baltimore might find it a little bit more difficult than they otherwise have in the past to pass that ball. This is probably going to lead to maybe getting back on track for Mark Andrews if they're going to have to be a little bit more selective, dink and dunk down the field, not be very explosive. It could be more of the Zay Jones and Mark Andrews show, and it would be nice to see Mark Andrews finally get his feet on the ground for fantasy purposes. He's almost outside the tight end 2 territory this season. And then the run game, Baltimore number 11 in run blocking. Buffalo's been good at stopping the run at number 6. So Buffalo might find it a little bit tougher sledding than they're otherwise used to. They are number 1 in run DVOA, Buffalo number 8. That is in the favor of Baltimore there, but I just think Baltimore is going to find it a little bit harder to run the ball. They're going to find it a little bit more difficult to pass the ball in this game. Buffalo looks like their pass game is going to be very good, so I'm going to go ahead and say, hey, we have an upset alert here. I think Buffalo can upset Baltimore. I think they win outright on this based off of the run DVOA. Buffalo should move the ball well in the air, not so well on the ground. For that reason, too, Tyler Bass becomes a kicker option. He's probably not streamable in most of your leagues, but keep that in mind. Baltimore kicker also, in line for a decent game there as well. All right, and then we got 2 Monday night games, Tennessee at Miami and Seattle at Detroit. We're going to go ahead with the best game on the slate. So that's Seattle heading into Detroit. It's a 46.5 Vegas game total. Very good, same as the last one. 3.5-point home favorites for Detroit over Seattle, giving Detroit a 25 team implied total, Seattle at 21.5. Seattle's offensive pass protection, 18. Detroit, number 20 in pass rush. Pretty even neutral matchup there in terms of sack. I know Detroit's got some guys that can pressure the quarterback, but pass DVOA, Seattle number 8, Detroit number 10. I know people have been passing on Detroit a little bit, but this is kind of indicative of just studs eat type of scenario on offense. It should be a standard day at the office in terms of pressure. And then the pass DVOA, Seattle might not find the explosive plays there at DK Metcalf. Probably going to have to work the ball down the field a little bit more, which is probably more of a Tyler Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba week than it is a DK Metcalf week. And if you're doing an island game matchup, a good way to get some leverage on the field because Metcalf's probably going to be the most popular wide receiver from Seattle in terms of roster percentages. And then in the run game, Seattle number 20 in run blocking, Detroit number 1 in stopping the run. Lots of stuffs behind the line of scrimmage and run DVOA, Seattle number 8, pretty good there, but Detroit number 4. We've seen Detroit's run defense just be really good. Lockdown last week, pretty much all season. Last season was very good against the run as well. I think we see Seattle struggle in this department. Sounds like perhaps we could see some Kenneth Walker come back. Either way, Charbonnet, even if he is the lead back, we don't have any Kenneth Walker. I think he's sittable in this matchup. I don't think he's going to have a very good game here. And Seattle's going to move the ball with their 3 wide receivers and Noah Fant in a game like this. In terms of Detroit, number 4 in offensive pass protection. Seattle number 10 in defensive pass rush. Pass DVOA, Seattle number 1 in defensive pass DVOA. Detroit has not been very effective, number 20, so not generating a ton of explosive plays. This tells me Detroit should have some time to throw the ball, but maybe a little less than they're used to. This looks to me to be an Amon-Ra St. Brown in tight end week, but Sam Laporte is out. So they're probably going to lean very heavily on Amon-Ra St. Brown. Don't be shocked if you see some Khalif Raymond in this as well. Didn't play a lot of snaps last week, but actually Amon-Ra St. Brown, and we got the guy Tim Patrick, I think, is coming over to play some snaps here in Detroit. We could see him with a sighting in a game like this where they're kind of more methodically moving the ball in the pass game. The run game's a good matchup. It's all green. Detroit number 2 in run blocking, number 3 in run DVOA. Seattle number 10 in stopping the run, and number 3 in run DVOA. So DVOA is an even matchup there. And then slight favor to Detroit's run blocking, but probably going to find it a little bit tougher sledding in the run game than they're used to. In a game like this, it seems like maybe Montgomery is an option for, you're not probably going to sit him in a 12-team league, but, in an 8-team league, he's one that you might be able to sit down in this particular matchup. I'm not sure if he's going to score in this particular game. Looks like this is going to be more of a low-scoring affair based off of what I see here. Seattle probably not going to be able to run the ball. Standard day at the office, passing it. 21 seems appropriate. 17 seems appropriate. Detroit really looking like they're going to struggle a little bit more on offense than they've already kind of struggled compared to what you expect. So I would bet the under in this, 46.5. I would bet the under on the Seattle-Detroit, despite them both having good offenses that could explode in a matchup like this. It's a little bit weird. I just think this is going to be low scoring and kind of a dud game. Don't be shocked if you see a lot of field goals from the Detroit and Seattle side on both ends, as they're not very effective moving the ball, especially finishing a drive with a touchdown. And we'll see if the other Monday night game ends up being a little bit more of or less of a downer than the Seattle-Detroit game. I think that one's going to be a letdown. Tennessee heading into Miami. This was even up earlier in the year or earlier in the week. Now we have Miami as 1-point home favorites, 36.5 Vegas game total. Again, weather could play an effect with that hurricane that just came through on Friday. Miami, 36.5 Vegas game total as 1-point home favorites, gives them 18.75 team implied total. Tennessee, 17.75 team implied total. Those are the two worst on the Monday night slate. Tennessee red in the offensive pass categories, 32nd in pass protection, 29th in pass DVOA. I think some of this is quarterback induced with some bad decision making. Miami 16th in pass rush, middle of the pack there. Should be able to get some pressure on Tennessee in this particular matchup, but they're number 28 in pass DVOA, so this tells me Tennessee on the plays where they do have time, they're probably going to be pretty effective and more explosive than they've otherwise been this season. This could be good news for both Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins in a matchup like this. The run game looks to be the better of the options, though. 21st for Tennessee's run blocking, and then 11th for run DVOA, while Miami is red, 25th in run stopping, 31st in run DVOA. We could see Pollard and Spears with pretty good games here. Tennessee, we could see moving the ball maybe a little bit more effectively on the pass game as well. I do like Tennessee to move the ball a little bit better than they're otherwise expecting here. So Pollard and I think Ridley are probably the main beneficiaries here, with Hopkins being, coming back from that injury and maybe garnering a few targets as well. In this, he's just getting better and better as the season goes on here, getting more play time. So keep that in mind. Miami side, 20th in pass protection, Tennessee 11th in pass rush. That's in the favor of Tennessee being able to get after the quarterback. We got some backups there from Miami, so keep that in mind. Pass DVOA for Miami, 28th, Tennessee 14th, middle of the pack. That's in the favor of Tennessee. I don't expect Miami's pass game to be very good, and they might be under a little bit of pressure here in this particular matchup as well. And then in the run game, it's in the favor of Tennessee in terms of play-by-play. Miami 31st in run blocking, Tennessee number 5 in stopping the run. So this tells me Miami's probably going to see a lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage, 2-3 yard gains at best. And then in terms of explosive plays, Tennessee's 23rd in run DVOA, Miami a little bit worse than that at 28th. Miami might find it a little bit better to have an explosive play against this Tennessee defense, but in general, it doesn't look like they're going to be explosive either. They're just not doing that this season, which is a little strange after last year. So this one's a weird one. So doesn't look like Miami's going to move the ball very well based off of this. A little bit struggle bust there. Tennessee looks like they're going to be a little bit better. They are 1-point road favorites. So I'm going to go ahead and say we have 2 Monday night upsets. Tennessee goes into Miami and upsets them. And then we see Seattle head into Detroit. And I think Seattle can... did I say this is an upset? I think this is just a bummer game. So not two upsets on Monday night. This is probably just going to be a low-scoring game, but expect Tennessee to upset Miami here. I like them to win this particular matchup. It's going to be a gross game. I think Tennessee moves the ball a little bit better, and Miami struggles in that department. So that's kind of how those games are going to go. That's going to do it for the adjusted line play report for week 4 of the NFL season, the 2024 NFL season. So if you appreciated this, certainly like the video. If you're new here and you haven't subscribed yet, give that a subscribe. If you made it this far, congratulations. You made it at least over an hour. I look at the record time here. So a lot of information here. Hopefully you can make those start-sit decisions that you need and win those fantasy matchups. Go out, make those prop bets. And then, hopefully your DFS lineups strike it rich. I would like to know about that if you go ahead and use some of this information to make a successful lineup. I absolutely want to hear about it. I would love seeing your mindset and hearing about that. So if you come across a successful DFS lineup, let me know about that on Twitter. DMs are open. So as always, I appreciate every single view. Adjusted line play report. I do this for you. It's going to be free forever. Hopefully you gain some information that you can use to kind of dominate your leagues, dominate those DFS things, and line the coffers of your prop bet in your sportsbook apps. Good luck on week 4, everybody. Let's go win some money together. Peace.